Hey, what's going on everyone? My name is Donovan and tonight I'm excited to do an unboxing and quick first impressions of this device right here. This is a very popular device, especially over in these areas. This is the Xiaomi Redmi Note 7 and I'm going to be sharing with you just some of my thoughts. So first of all, before we get into that, I just want to mention the price. So I picked mine up at gearbest.com and you can pick it up for anywhere from about $200 or really under $200 for the lowest spec version. So this is one with 32 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of internal storage, 3 gigs of RAM, and you can see it goes over, I think, right around $300 for the most expensive version, which comes with 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage, and now it's also available in Ruby Red, so you can check that out in the links down below. All of the links to any of the versions you might be interested in will be down below, and also any awesome deals that may be going on as well. So I picked up the black version, so I'm kind of a plain person, I guess, but I picked up the 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of internal storage. That's kind of right in the middle. I got mine from GearBest for just under $240, and let's just take a look at some of the specs they mentioned here. So definitely one of the things that is a huge positive for this device is the cameras. So we have a 48 megapixel camera and 5 megapixel camera on the rear, 13 megapixel on the front, which they don't mention here, but we have a 6.3-inch Full HD Plus display, so it has that little notch, which we'll explore that in just a little bit, and probably, I would say, arguably one of the more impressive specs here, especially for the fact that you can get one of the Redmi Note 7s for under $200, is this processor right here, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 660 processor. That's a pretty high-end processor for a phone that you can get for under $200, and then we have a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which ought to get through quite a bit of usage. So we'll explore that as we get more into the device, but this is the box it comes in, and typically Xiaomi is known for giving us at least a case, which they did here. Not really sure what kind of case they gave, but usually it's kind of a thin one that you it's nice to have initially, but then you probably want to get something maybe a little bit thicker. It's a very thin TPU case as you normally get with Xiaomi devices, but it's nice that they at least include something in the box rather than absolutely nothing. So we have a couple of packages here. So I have the global version of the phone, by the way, so you definitely want to pick up the global version because if you pick up the Chinese version, you won't have the Play Store, and you'll have to kind of go around to adding the Google Play Store. So this version, of course, will have the Google Play Store. So we have a glass back, fingerprint sensor, 48 megapixel camera, 5 megapixel camera. There's our flash. We're going to go ahead and remove this warning here. Also with my SIM information. So we do have dual SIM, of course. Power button, volume rocker. We're going to go ahead and power it on while we're waiting here. So there is our notch. We have, it looks like an earpiece. I'm not sure if this is honestly my first time really kind of exploring this device, but that may be a speaker, but I'm guessing it's probably just the earpiece and our 13 megapixel camera there in that notch. Down here, we probably have a microphone and speaker, Type-C, so that's awesome for a device. Especially, you know, I think by now, with it being 2019, we should definitely have every device coming with Type-C, especially if they're going to be $200 or more. We have our SIM tray there. We'll take a look at that in just a second. We have a headphone jack, so awesome for including that. We have a little microphone there, and then we do have, if you can get it, if I can get that in the camera, there actually is an IR blaster. So Xiaomi is one of the only companies I know of that just keeps including the IR blaster in just about every phone that they release, which is pretty cool. So also in the package, you get Type-C cable. So yeah, that's awesome. And then you get the European plug. Now, because I bought it from gearbest.com, they do also include this adapter because I live in the US. So I'm going to have to use this. Now, let's see here. Let's see if it tells me what my specs are here on this power adapter, because I'm thinking it's probably a fast power adapter. So we have a 2 amp output, so that's definitely a fast charger there, and we'll have to test it out a little bit more in just a second. But before we do that, I'm looking for my SIM removal tool, which I assume probably came in one of these things, but if not, I'll have to go grab one. All right, so I got that SIM tray removed, so I want to go ahead and show you what it looks like. So you can see here I'm using my Mint Mobile card here because it will support LTE with Mint Mobile on band 4. And then you can see here there is an extra SIM tray, or you can use a micro SD card there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in, and hopefully we get LTE right away. And we'll go ahead and get the phone set up and take a look at what kinds of things we get on here. So one thing I do like is that we are going to be getting Android 9.0 or Android Pie on this device. And let's get this thing set up and see what all she has to offer. All right, so I have my Redmi Note 7 all set up. So I want to go ahead and share with you just some quick first thoughts on the device. So first thing I want to do is I want to compare it up next to a very similar device in terms of specs and in terms of price point. So this is the Moto G7. This is the Redmi Note 7 over here in my left hand. You can see they have a pretty similar design. The Moto G7 is a slightly wider device. Both have 6.3-inch displays, but this one's taller and narrower versus the wider design of the Moto G7. This one only has a 3,000 milliamp hour battery versus a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. You can see both have a similar chin down here at the bottom, slightly different dimple up here at the top for that front shooting camera. But overall, very similar design, very similar specs as well. Difference here is with the Moto G7, you can only get this one with up to 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. And again, I paid $300 for mine, whereas the Redmi Note 7 for that same price point, you can get 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage. And next thing that I want to mention in terms of difference is the performance. So in terms of performance, the Redmi Note 7 is going to be definitely one of the faster devices you can get at this price point. So you can see this one has a Geekbench 4 score of 5433 in terms of the multi-core score versus over here on the G7 a 4815. That's the difference in processor. This one has the Snapdragon 660 versus the Snapdragon, I believe it's the 636 over here on the Moto G7. It's been a while since I took a look at that. But also one other thing worth note is this one's going to have that 48 megapixel camera, which on paper should take better pictures, but that's yet to be seen. Obviously, this is my very first day with it, so we're going to have to kind of analyze that over time to see how this one performs in terms of that camera. But one other thing worth mentioning in terms of major differences between these two is definitely in how they are actually operated. So the software, obviously, they're both running Android 9.0, but Motorola has their has their skin, and Xiaomi has their skin, which a lot of people have a love or hate relationship with MIUI. So this one is running MIUI 10.2, and that's that global ROM. Again, that's how you're going to get the Google Play Store. You want to make sure you get that global ROM. And then we do have an update here. I'll take a look at that maybe a little bit in another video probably. But anyways, one of the things I love about MIUI 10.2, or really MIUI in general, is just all of these different system devices we have here. So we can, of course, theme it out, which is available on a lot of different Android devices. And of course, that's one of the great things about Android devices is the fact that you can pretty much make it your own however you want to. So we have some lock screen password options there, notification and status bar options. So nothing really of note there. Full screen display, of course, that's going to stretch it out depending depending on which app you use. Second space is a very cool option. So that would be for circumstances maybe where you want to pass it off to a kid. You maybe don't want them to see the same apps that you see in general, or maybe you want them to use a different version of the app. So that's kind of cool. So second space, maybe you have a work version of your device versus a home version of your device. That's what that's going to allow. It actually allows you to use different fingerprints for different spaces. So for instance, I'll just kind of show you real quick. If I turn the phone off and turn it on with my right finger, it's going to open up my second space, and you can see it's going to be slightly different here. So now the order of my apps is switched. You can see there is another switch option, so that one's going to be automatic, and then I can go back to my left finger, and now it's going to switch it, and now it's back to my original space, or maybe my home space, whatever it might be. And I can use different fingers in order to switch that up, which is pretty cool. So that's just one feature it has that you don't see on a lot of devices. And we do also have a number of other options in here under the additional settings, which are kind of cool. So we can adjust the notification light. We have some headphone and audio effects, which of course are going to utilize that 3.5mm headphone jack. We have one-handed mode. We have quick ball, which I've never really used in general, but we have button and gesture shortcuts. So we can take a screenshot using 3 fingers, and you can see there's a number of different gestures that we have available, depending on whether you want to use those or not. Obviously, you can use them if you want. You don't have to use them if you don't want to either. But lots of different cool options here available in MIUI. That's one of the beautiful things about it, is that there's just so many different tweaks that you can make to it. There is also another one I want to mention here called Dual Apps. So that allows you to use 2 different versions of a particular app. So maybe you have a work Facebook and a personal Facebook, so you can have 2 different versions, or WhatsApp, or whatever app you might use where you have 2 different accounts. That Dual Apps allows you to use those 2 different accounts, which is pretty cool. That's actually becoming more and more common on devices, and I believe MIUI might have been one of the first ones to have that available. So also very cool. So overall, the Redmi Note 7, just in initial impressions, I'm quite impressed with what Xiaomi can put out at that price point. So far, I am liking the device. Obviously, got to explore a lot more with this device, and lots more to come with the Redmi Note 7 in future videos. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.